Hi everyone, and welcome to this first live chat on Belly Balance UK Instagram. So my name is Sofia Antonsson. I'm a registered dietitian and also the founder of this company. And we are now waiting for our UK-based dietitian Kaitlin to join us. Hi Kaitlin!
Hello! Yay!
Matching clothes!
We do have matching clothes.
My story goes back to basically 2008 when I started working in primary care as a dietitian in Sweden. And I was like new from school and I was sitting there having all of these kind of gut issue patients with IBS, most of them. And no one really got better with my advice. So we had really like poor advice at that time in Sweden any way, like general advice, just avoid the foods that you don't feel like eating and stuff like that. So I one day stumbled across the low FODMAP diet. And since I have IBS myself, I tried it. I got really so much better within like 3 days. So I started implementing that on my patients as well. And they all came back happy with less symptoms. And, they could get back to work and they could be outside playing with their grandkids or whatever. So
Very good.
Yeah, and so it's actually started there, and then all of a sudden, all the dietitians in Sweden wanted to get in contact with me to get to know more about the diet. So I started educating them, and from that on, I have implemented the low FODMAP diet into Swedish healthcare. So all of our dietitians now in Sweden are using the diet, and we help them with like patient material and how to treat their patients. And we have some online educations and stuff. So I started out at that time with IBS groups, and I kind of fast realized that if I treat the patients in a setup where I talk about like gut health, what is IBS, how does the stomach work, so that they get like kind of more secure in their diagnosis. That's really a good start for the treatment, and then adding the low FODMAP diet and also some stress management techniques. So I basically had like groups of 10 people, and in every group I had at least 8 coming back saying that they felt so much better, they have less symptoms. So that was kind of cool actually.
Yeah, really
to have like great results.
Really great results.
Yeah. So, and then we started to get questions from people living all around Sweden. Could we attend these groups as well? So then we decided to do a online treatment, a web-based online treatment, and then from there on, we just actually made the app then Belly Balance and launched that 2019. So wow. It's been now 4 years, and we have had, I think now 130,000 downloads on the app. So yeah.
Now it has luckily come to the UK.
Yeah.
So a valuable tool which I know will help so many patients and also dietitians working and living in the UK.
Yeah. We do hope so. We have had really good response from the dietitians and from our users as well. So yeah, we're really hoping for this, and we're so glad that you're on board as well. I'm so happy to work with another dietitian in another country, obviously. So yeah, that's going to be so much fun, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's so nice to work with you, and to hear that you've done such incredible work in Sweden, even integrating something like the low FODMAP diet into the healthcare system. Is just huge. And of course the low FODMAP diet I think is integrated here a lot, but what we're finding is that patients are struggling to access healthcare and access dietitians to be able to support them through this actually very challenging diet. And that's where the Belly Balance app can really step in, because as well as guiding patients through this step-by-step process of managing IBS by guiding them through this low FODMAP diet, as you've touched on, Sophia, it also has all sorts of other useful tools. So we've got the food and symptoms diary, which tracks your symptoms and also provides analytics. We've got all of the low FODMAP recipes and meal plans. So I think the app has over 500 recipes to help patients. And even as a dietitian myself, I think that's such a useful tool, because the question I always get asked by patients is, well, what should I eat? Even though you guide them through kind of foods to choose and foods to avoid, but to have those recipes there, and you can just say, well, literally there's a week's worth of recipes for you to choose from this week. It's all there on the Belly Balance app. I know you've also building stuff for the Belly Balance website as well. It's just really fantastic. And then, as well as all of that, integrating the stress management techniques.
Exactly.
So in the UK app, we have the yoga videos, the meditation videos, mindfulness, breath work, with potentially more modalities coming in future.
Exactly. And I mean, that's where you come in a lot with your experience. So could you just share a little bit about yourself, and also, I mean, your interest in gut health, but also combining that with like stress management techniques like breath work and yoga and mindfulness. And I mean, that's really something that my experience from patients is that the low FODMAP diet, that is like step one, and then adding the stress management techniques makes it so much better.
Hello, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kaitlin. I am a registered dietitian living and working in the UK, specifically in London, and I have joined the Belly Balance team to help with the launch of the UK app here. So my key interest is gut health. I used to work in the NHS for several years, where I specialised into gastroenterology, was working with patients with inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and also those with IBS. And that's where I trained to deliver the low FODMAP diet to patients who were suffering from IBS. But what I specifically found when I had more and more experience over the years working with patients was diet wasn't the only factor which was contributing to these IBS symptoms. So as we now know, IBS is considered a disorder of the gut-brain interaction, meaning there's a miscommunication between our gut and our brain. And so, for example, when we're feeling particularly stressed or particularly anxious, or leading just a very busy, hectic day, then our brain can quite literally send signals to our gut to tell us that we are stressed. And what happens is our gut muscles can become very sensitive to foods that we're eating, or just sensitive in general, a term we call visceral hypersensitivity of the intestines. And when patients are in this state, it's almost no matter what they eat, they're going to experience some sort of symptoms. And unless we kind of deal or address those, the stress or the anxiety, or address that gut-brain imbalance, we're never going to get as good an improvement in symptoms as if we just focused on diet alone. So I was noticing this a lot with the patients I was working with, and we know modalities such as yoga can be really beneficial for gut health for multiple reasons. One, because of the movement, the stretching, the compression. It's really good to help release trapped gas, give your gut a little internal massage, but also because yoga incorporates the mindfulness, the meditation, and the breath work. And we have a huge amount of research studies coming out now to show the scientific evidence of these particular practices in reducing cortisol levels, and therefore reducing stress, reducing the sensitivity of the gut, reducing IBS-like symptoms in particular. And I always talk about this particular study that looked at, they took a group of patients with IBS, they put half of them on the low FODMAP diet, and then they put the other half on a 12-week yoga program where they practiced yoga 3 times a week for the 12 weeks. And what they found was both groups had a significant improvement in their gut symptoms, and there was no significant difference between the two groups, meaning the low FODMAP diet was essentially as effective as practicing yoga 3 times a week for 12 weeks at reducing IBS symptoms. So that's just huge. And being a big yogi myself, I love practicing yoga. I was recommending that my patients, go on YouTube, have a look at yoga videos, have a look at breathwork videos. And then it got to the point where I thought, hang on a minute, maybe I could actually start teaching this myself. So just over a year ago now, I moved out to Bali in Indonesia, did my yoga teacher training. And now, as well as being a qualified dietitian, I'm also a qualified yoga teacher. So I now integrate the work of dietary management with yoga, meditation and breath work to create a bit more of a holistic package with improving IBS symptoms. And I'm super excited to be bringing that to Belly Balance a little bit more too.
Yeah. Looking ahead a bit, how we're planning this, I mean, you and me are going to have these regular live chats with different subjects or themes every time, and we're going to ask you followers to come with suggestions of different topics, of course, but I do think it's important that we really dig into what is IBS, what kind of common symptoms do we have with IBS, what is probiotics, what is prebiotics, how about the gut microbiome, for example, how does that affect IBS? So I mean, we do have lots of topics that we're going to cover. I mean, hormones, for women especially.
Yes.
Hormones is a huge area, also affected by stress, affecting the gut health, of course. So that's also something that we want to bring up.
Often the patients are either they go through the healthcare system, they maybe go see a doctor about something else, and then they get asked about perhaps their bowel habits, and it kind of comes to light that perhaps their bowel habits aren't considered that normal, because we don't go around talking to everyone about how we poop, and so it's only when you get into a specific healthcare setting that you might be asked the question and then understand, okay, maybe if I'm opening my bowels 4 or 5 times a day, that isn't quite considered normal, or perhaps I've always suffered from bloating and so just thought it was something I had to put up with, but actually recognizing that if you're suffering from bloating every day, then that isn't necessarily the sign of a healthy gut. And I think that is the difficult thing, is we don't have a definition for essentially good gut health, but we have to look at, okay, the absence of any unwanted gut symptoms. So particularly when we look at patients with IBS, symptoms they can include things like abdominal bloating, abdominal pain, maybe excess wind, so farting, change in bowel habits, so maybe looser stools, opening your bowels more frequently, or certainly harder stools, opening your bowels less frequently. And so when you start to notice these changes consistently, kind of over a 3 to 6 month period, then that's when I always recommend that patients seek additional advice, go see their GP, just to essentially rule out anything more sinister, like an inflammatory bowel condition, and that's then when they kind of point the finger at IBS.
We have, great doctors, but the knowledge about IBS is kind of limited. So many of my patients, they have been to several doctors trying to get help, hasn't got the correct help. The doctors have given them some kind of strange advice, when walking out the door, like, you could try to avoid lactose, maybe you get better. Or just try to avoid fiber, or try to cut out gluten, or whatever. So the advice is really poor, and that's fine, because the doctors should not give nutritional advice.
Again, I agree. We have fantastic doctors here in the UK, and I do believe that the understanding of IBS and the management of IBS is becoming more recognised. However, I have had countless patients come to see me because they've received all sorts of weird and wonderful information from their doctor or GP, such as, like you say, Sofia, try cutting out gluten, try cutting out lactose. It's always around, cut this out, cut that out. So what I'm left with is picking up the pieces of someone who is then on an overly restrictive diet, not knowing what to eat, absolutely scared and terrified about what to put in their mouth. Sometimes some doctors do give some rough advice about a low FODMAP diet, but they say, here's an A4 printed sheet, go follow the diet. And then again, I've seen patients 8 months down the line still following this very restricted diet, not having worked through the diet to understand and specify specific triggers.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a mixed bag, absolutely. And I think, like you mentioned, Sofia, it's recognizing that really the low FODMAP diet should only be delivered by a registered dietitian who has had adequate training. And so doctors should recognise when to refer on to a dietitian. The difficulty in the UK is the NHS is under such strain, and the wait time to see a dietitian can be incredibly long, which is why I'm so glad, again, Belly Balance is here, because I know it will be such a valuable tool for so many people who can access a dietitian or dietetic advice straight away.
We actually have the same thing in Sweden. It's really hard to get to dietitian. We have like underweight, it's the mainly prioritized diagnosis right now. So that's why we built this app for the user to go through it by themselves. So in Sweden, you can actually do it, and then you can book a consultation with one of our dietitians if you want to. Maybe we'll have the same in the UK. I don't know. It's not really decided yet. But I mean, the treatment is built that way, that you're supposed to do it by yourself. And it's 11 steps. So we're holding your hand all the way. And it's really simple. And with all the tools, basically, we build everything about around the traffic light system. So it's green, or it's yellow, or it's red. So it's fairly easy to know. The red things, don't eat. The green things, they're okay to eat. So I think it's fairly easy, though, to get started with the app. And then you can also, if you're a dietitian, of course, you can start up the patient with the low FODMAP diet. Then you can recommend the app, and they can go for themselves for a couple of weeks, and then you can do the revisit. I don't know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great tool to use alongside your patients, because I read a statistic once that patients only remember about 20% of information they're told during a healthcare consultation. So if you think about how much information you have to give a patient about a low FODMAP diet in that initial consultation, they probably walk out the door remembering about 20% of it. And although we provide resources, the Belly Balance app can be that tool in your pocket to be able to search for low FODMAP products, be able to be in the supermarket, scan a product, see if it's high or low FODMAP. And obviously our scanner now has an incredible feature, which if you scan a product which is high FODMAP, it will recommend a suitable low FODMAP product as an alternative. So it really is that kind of everyday companion that, again, dietitians just can't provide for their patients, even if you see them in a private setting.
Exactly. So it's actually a support tool for the dietitian as well. That's how we use it in Sweden anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So potentially, yes, it's a very common symptom of IBS. So you can get upper gastrointestinal symptoms, so burping, heartburn, acid reflux, and you can also get lower gastrointestinal symptoms, so gas, farting, wind. Now, it's important to note that a little bit of farting and a little bit of bloating is entirely normal. So it's normal to fart about 20 times a day. However, if it's particularly more than that or particularly smelly, then that could be a sign that your gut is kind of imbalanced, or there's something kind of going on there. So yes, very typical symptoms of IBS.
And I could add that when the lower part symptoms get better, for example, bloatedness, usually the upper part symptom gets better at once, at the same time. So starting addressing the lower part symptoms would be a good start there.
Absolutely not. So I always say there's no need to exclude major food groups unless there is a clinical reason to do so. So first of all, I always ask, how have you been diagnosed with lactose intolerance? We would want to make sure that you definitely do have a lactose intolerance. That can be diagnosed through a hydrogen breath test, or also duodenal biopsies, or you can do exclusion of lactose for 4 weeks, see if your symptoms improve, and then just to confirm it's definitely the culprit, reintroduce lactose and see if your symptoms return. However, having a lactose intolerance has nothing to do with having a gluten intolerance, and therefore you wouldn't need to exclude gluten if you have a lactose intolerance. Gluten and gluten-containing products are a really valuable source of nutrients for the diet. They provide protein, they provide vitamins, they provide minerals, and there is really no need to exclude that group unless there, like I said, is a clinical indication to do so.
So it's usually the fibers that you react to in rye or wheat or barley, for example. It's not gluten, it's the fiber that creates the bloatedness or the gas. Yeah.
So it is really tricky when patients remain in this elimination stage for a prolonged period of time. And I would say that's anything more than 8 weeks, because then first of all, you end up very restricted, and what that can do is actually decrease the diversity of the gut microbiome. And when this starts to happen, then there is more difficulty with reintroducing foods. So typically what we can do is diversify the diet with known low FODMAP foods, perhaps maybe introduce something like a probiotic, which might be helpful to again introduce more good bacteria to the gut. But then with FODMAP reintroduction, it's all about gradual and steady, choosing one food at a time. Typically what I see is patients try to like reintroduce lots of FODMAP foods together, or reintroduce large portions of FODMAP, of a particular FODMAP food, and often that can then trigger symptoms. So the way we do it in the Belly Balance app is typically gradually introduce food over a few days, and through using the treatment in the app, you learn about the different groups of FODMAPs and how foods are categorized into these particular groups, and you learn to understand if it's particular types of FODMAPs that you might be reacting to. And by reintroducing, using the Belly Balance app, you can reintroduce the correct foods to identify specific FODMAP intolerances, because some foods contain multiple FODMAPs. And it's just about understanding this to be able to follow the correct reintroduction process, to be able to draw the most accurate results from the whole reintroduction. Just that, it was such a fantastic talk, and I'm really looking forward to all the other lives, because like you said, we're really going to deep dive into specific topics. And we'll have to coordinate on outfits next time as well.
Definitely.